There's a point beneath the surface of the ocean where light doesn't just fade, it dies. Beyond the 300-foot mark, the ocean becomes a crushing, suffocating void of endless black water. At this depth, the pressure outside your body is strong enough to collapse a steel cylinder in a fraction of a second. But humans are drawn to the dark. We build underwater research facilities, classified military submarine pens, and sprawling flooded subterranean missile silos. And then, for reasons the public is never meant to know, we abandon them. Welcome back to Prince of Darkness. Tonight, we step inside the darkest intersection of urban exploration and deep-sea survival, Submerged Urbex and Thalassophobia. We are unlocking 4 documented accounts of divers, cartographers, and abandoned facility explorers who went into the deep, black water where no human was meant to tread. They weren't looking for fish or coral. They were exploring human structures built thousands of feet below the Earth's crust, structures that were locked from the outside after something else moved in. Check your air supply, check your depth gauge, and let's sink into the abyss. Our first account takes us to the desolate plains of eastern Washington state, beneath the surface of an abandoned Cold War Titan I missile complex. Built in the late 1950s, this sprawling subterranean fortress extended over 150 feet directly into the Earth's bedrock. It was a labyrinth of steel corridors, blast doors, and 3 massive vertical launching silos. When the facility was decommissioned in 1965, the groundwater pumps were permanently turned off. Over the next half-century, rising water tables flooded the lower floors, turning the pitch-black missile silos into a drowned, vertical steel maze. In September of 2022, a team of 3 highly experienced cave divers and extreme industrial urbex explorers, Mark, Eric, and Sarah, obtained unauthorized access to the flooded complex. They were not amateurs. They carried closed-circuit rebreathers, high-intensity tactical floodlights, and specialized underwater sonar mapping equipment. Their goal was to descend into Silo 1, swim through the flooded umbilical tunnels at a depth of 90 feet, and document the submerged control center that had been sealed off since 1965. The entry was brutal. To reach the waterline, the team had to rappel 70 feet down a rusted vertical air shaft. At the bottom lay the water, completely motionless, jet black, and freezing cold. It smelled heavily of ancient rust, hydraulic fluid, and stagnant minerals. Mark secured their primary dive reel to the rusted steel grating at the water's edge, pulled his mask over his face, and dropped into the flooded abyss. The visibility initially appeared immaculate. Their powerful dive lights cut through the water, revealing massive 20-ton blast doors suspended on twisted hinges, surrounded by electrical cables that hung like severed veins from the concrete ceiling. 30 minutes into the dive, at a depth of 110 feet inside the drowned control dome, Eric noticed a sudden change in his equipment. His digital depth gauge began to fluctuate wildly, reading 70 feet, then 200 feet, then 0, before his main dive light began to pulse rhythmically. Mark pointed his light towards Eric to signal a retreat, but as the beam crossed the far side of the flooded dome, all 3 divers froze. Suspended in the water directly above the shattered main computer banks was a structural anomaly. A heavy reinforced steel hatch, the blast door leading to the lowest emergency escape tunnel, had been bowed outward from the inside, as if an immense hydraulic pressure had expanded against it. The 4-inch thick locking bars were twisted like soft tinfoil. Mark swam closer, his camera recording every frame. The water surrounding the breached hatch was noticeably warmer than the rest of the flooded silo, shimmering with thermal waves. Mark pointed his primary light into the pitch-black opening behind the destroyed hatch. The tunnel didn't lead to a concrete shaft. It extended downward into a natural vertical limestone fissure that had opened up beneath the silo's foundation. a fissure that went far deeper into the earth than any architectural blueprint had ever recorded. Suddenly, a massive acoustic disturbance rippled through the water. It wasn't a sound heard through the air, but a heavy, low-frequency pressure wave that vibrated against their chest cavities and resonated through their dive helmets. Thump, thump, thump. The frequency was slow, rhythmic, and incredibly heavy, creating microbubbles in the water surrounding their masks. Sarah frantically signaled to turn back, pointing at her dive computer. Their oxygen rebreather scrubbers were showing abnormal carbon dioxide spikes. As they turned their bodies around in the tight flooded dome, Mark's helmet camera captured something moving out of the vertical limestone fissure behind them. It wasn't a fish or an aquatic mammal. Out of the pitch-black void of the fissure came a shape, pale, elongated, and entirely hairless. Its skin was translucent, showing thin black veins pumping a dark, viscous fluid. It possessed no eyes, only smooth, leathery skin stretched across an elongated skull. But its mouth was wide open, lined with multiple rows of small, needle-like ivory structures. The entity did not swim with fins. It dragged its long, jointed limbs against the flooded steel walls of the silo, moving with an eerie, weightless speed that defied fluid dynamics. Panic instantly flooded the team. Mark kicked his fins violently, scrambling back into the narrow umbilical conduit. In their desperate bid to escape, the divers kicked up massive clouds of ancient silt and flaking rust from the ceiling, instantly reducing the visibility from 50 feet to absolute zero. They were trapped in a dark, flooded iron pipe, surrounded by a cloud of black silt, guided only by the thin nylon line on Mark's dive reel. As Eric pushed his body through the narrow conduit, he felt a sudden, violent tension on his fins. Something had grabbed his left leg in the dark. He kicked backward frantically with his right foot, feeling his heavy boots strike a dense, rubbery surface before the grip snapped. He didn't look back. He launched himself through the narrow opening, breaking the surface of the launch shaft in a spray of bloody, silt-covered water. All three divers made it back to the rusted platform, gasping for air as they stripped off their masks. When Mark examined Eric's left fin back at their campsite, his skin went pale. The heavy, reinforced rubber of the technical fin had been cleanly sliced through, showing 4 deep, parallel cuts that had penetrated through the neoprene boot beneath. The footage recovered from Mark's helmet camera was reviewed by independent Urbex researchers before the file was quietly taken down from public forums. The closure of the abandoned Titan 1 silo was permanently welded shut 6 weeks later by a private security firm, surrounded by chain-link fences and high-voltage warning signs. The public believes the closure was to prevent trespassing accidents, but those who have seen the raw video know the truth. They didn't seal the silo to keep explorers out. They sealed it because the flooded depths of our abandoned past have been reclaimed by things that thrive in the cold dark. Our second account moves from man-made flooded ruins to the absolute extreme of deep-sea horror, the abyssal zone of the Mariana Trench. At a depth of over 30,000 feet, the ocean floor is a world of perpetual night where the temperature hovers just above freezing and the hydrostatic pressure exceeds 8 tons per square inch. It is an environment more hostile to human life than the surface of the moon. In the summer of 2019, an international oceanic research consortium deployed an experimental deep-sea benthic habitat known as Station Hadal 4. Positioned at a depth of 11,000 feet along the edge of the Challenger Deep, Hadal 4 was a state-of-the-art titanium pod designed to house 4 scientists for 30-day research cycles. The station was tethered directly to a heavy surface support vessel via an armored fiber-optic umbilical cable that provided power, communications, and atmospheric regulation. The team consisted of Dr. Alan Vance, a veteran deep-sea biologist, 2 structural engineers, and a young oceanographer named Elena. For the first 14 days, the mission was a historic success. The station's exterior floodlights illuminated a world that human eyes had never seen. Sprawling fields of glass sponges, translucent amphipods, and massive underwater vents spewing mineral-rich water into the abyss. On the 15th night, at 02:14 a.m., the primary umbilical cable connecting Hadal 4 to the surface vessel experienced a catastrophic electrical failure. Inside the titanium habitat, the main floodlights instantly went dark, replaced by the dull, sickly red glow of emergency battery-powered LED strips. The station's internal life support systems switched to local reserves, giving the crew 72 hours of oxygen. Dr. Vance immediately established contact with the surface vessel via the backup acoustic hydrophone. The response from the surface captain was frantic. The support ship had been hit by a sudden freak storm, and the winch system holding the primary cable had snapped. Hadal 4 was completely alone on the ocean floor, disconnected from the surface, sitting in total, crushing darkness at 11,000 feet. As the crew waited for a rescue submersible to be deployed from Guam, Dr. Vance stepped into the observation dome, a thick acrylic hemisphere that provided a 180-degree view of the seafloor surrounding the station. He clicked on the exterior emergency searchlight. The beam cut through the black water, revealing the desolate, muddy seabed extending into the darkness. Then, Elena noticed a disturbance in the acoustic telemetry logs. The station's exterior hydrophones, designed to record the low-frequency songs of migrating whales thousands of feet above, were picking up a localized sound coming from the seabed directly beneath the station. It was a slow, heavy, rhythmic clicking sound, like giant porcelain plates being struck together under immense pressure. Click. Click, click. As the clicking grew louder, the station's structural hull began to groan. Hydrostatic pressure sensors inside the airlock showed a subtle, terrifying fluctuation. Something was physically contacting the outer titanium skin of the habitat. Dr. Vance pointed the exterior searchlight down towards the base of the landing struts. The light illuminated a shape that defied every known law of marine biology. Rising out of a deep trench-like fissure in the sediment beneath the station was an organism of impossible scale. It did not possess a torpedo-like body like a shark or a squid. It was a massive, segmented, disc-shaped entity spanning over 60 feet in diameter. Its surface was covered in thick, calcified armor plating that resembled black volcanic glass, encrusted with ancient fossilized deep-sea vents. The entity was not swimming. It was crawling up the titanium struts of Hadal 4 using dozens of jointed chitinous appendages. As it scaled the structure, its central mass shifted, revealing a single, massive, translucent aperture that opened like an iris. Inside the aperture, illuminated by a pale bioluminescent fluid, were thousands of undulating thread-like tendrils that pulsed in sync with the clicking sound. "Alan, turn the light off," Elena whispered, her voice breaking with absolute primal terror. "Turn it off now." Dr. Vance hit the switch. The exterior searchlight died. The habitat returned to absolute red darkness. For the next 4 hours, the 4 scientists sat in total silence in the red glow of the emergency lights, listening to the horror happening outside their thin titanium walls. The entity did not attack the station with violent force. Instead, it wrapped its massive, segmented body around the observation dome. The scientists could hear the calcified armor scraping against the thick acrylic glass just inches from their faces. Then, the hydrophone recorded something far worse than clicking. Through the thick metal hull, a low, vibrating frequency filled the air of the station. It was a rhythmic sound that slowly shifted in pitch, perfectly imitating the low-frequency acoustic ping of a Navy sonar unit, the exact signal that rescue submersibles use to locate lost targets on the sea floor. The entity was emitting a mock rescue signal into the deep water, using the station as a lure to attract whatever surface vessel came down to investigate. By the time the heavy displacement rescue submersible Nautilus II reached the site 48 hours later, they found Hadal 4 resting on its side in the mud. The titanium hull was intact, but the observation dome was completely covered in a thick, black, tar-like organic resin that prevented any light from entering or leaving. When the rescue team cut through the emergency hatch, they found Dr. Vance and Elena alive, but suffering from severe psychological shock and acute sensory deprivation. The two structural engineers were gone. The interior airlock leading to the ocean floor had been opened from the inside. The official report filed by the Oceanographic Institute stated that the engineers suffered from nitrogen narcosis and severe high-pressure nervous syndrome, causing them to hallucinate and open the airlock in a state of delirium. Hadal 4 was abandoned on the ocean floor, its location struck from public navigational charts. The black resin covering the dome was analyzed, but its cellular composition contained no matching DNA sequences in any known scientific database. It remains at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, a titanium tomb sitting in the dark, waiting for the next light to descend into the deep. Our third account brings us to the rugged, storm-battered coast of northern Norway, inside a former classified NATO submarine base known in Cold War intelligence archives as Sector 9. Constructed deep inside a hollowed-out coastal granite mountain in the late 1960s, Sector 9 was an engineering marvel. It featured a massive sea-level tunnel that allowed nuclear submarines to enter directly from the Norwegian Sea into a subterranean dry dock completely hidden from satellite surveillance. When the base was decommissioned in 1998, the heavy steel blast gates at the ocean entrance were lowered. The facility was stripped of its classified technology, and the upper tunnels were sealed with concrete. However, the lower submarine pens, a vast network of flooded water channels, control bridges, and ammunition vaults remained frozen in time, submerged under 40 feet of dark, Arctic seawater. In October of 2023, a renowned Swedish urban explorer and dark documentary creator named Johan, accompanied by a seasoned technical diver named Henrik, set out to accomplish a legendary Urbex milestone: to enter Sector 9 from the ocean side, dive beneath the submerged blast gates, and explore the abandoned submarine pens. The weather on the surface was brutal, with gale-force Arctic winds driving freezing rain across the fjord. Johan and Henrik deployed their inflatable dive boat half a mile offshore, geared up in heavy commercial dry suits, and dropped into the black, icy water of the fjord. Using underwater scooters, they descended along the vertical granite wall to a depth of 60 feet, where the massive barnacle-encrusted iron blast gates of Sector 9 emerged from the gloom. The dive was perilous. To enter the facility, they had to squeeze their bodies through a narrow gap where the bottom of the rusted iron gate met the rocky seafloor, a space less than 3 feet wide, filled with sharp rusted steel rebar and jagged rocks. Henrik pushed through first, dragging his technical equipment behind him, followed closely by Johan. As they emerged on the inside of the blast gates, their powerful dive lights cut through the water, revealing a breathtaking, terrifying sight. They were floating inside a cavernous subterranean cathedral of concrete and steel. The water inside the submarine pen was completely still, dark and clear as glass. Above them, suspended from the massive concrete ceiling, were rusted overhead cranes, catwalks, and control booths that hung in the dark like ancient iron skeletons. Johann signaled to Henrik, pointing his camera toward the central dry dock channel. The channel was over 400 feet long, designed to house attack submarines. As they swam along the submerged concrete docks, they passed abandoned control offices where desks, chairs, and filing cabinets sat rotting under 40 feet of water, preserved in the freezing, oxygen-poor environment. 70 minutes into the dive, as they reached the furthest, deepest section of the submarine pen, the heavy ammunition loading bay, Johann's underwater audio equipment recorded a sudden acoustic anomaly. Through the quiet hiss of their rebreathers, a distinct sound began to echo through the water. It was not the sound of water movement or shifting metal. It was the clear, rhythmic sound of heavy, iron-soled boots walking across a steel catwalk above the waterline. Clang, clang, clang. Johann stopped swimming, hovering neutrally buoyant in the dark water. He pointed his light upward toward the surface. The waterline inside the submarine pen was roughly 15 feet above them, leading to an enclosed air pocket trapped beneath the mountain's concrete ceiling. Henrik nodded, gesturing that they should surface inside the air pocket to investigate. The two divers inflated their buoyancy compensators and slowly broke the surface of the water inside the dark submarine pen. The air inside the mountain was frigid, thick with the stench of ancient diesel fuel, ozone, and something foul, a decay that smelled like old rot. They switched on their helmet-mounted tactical floodlights, cutting through the dense, hanging mist that hovered over the water. The beam revealed the main control catwalk extending across the width of the dry dock. Standing on the rusted iron catwalk, 60 feet away from them in the middle of a sealed, abandoned military mountain, was a figure. Johann's heart slammed against his ribs. The figure was wearing a dark, vintage Soviet-era naval uniform, complete with a heavy woolen coat and a gas mask. But the uniform was not dry. It was dripping with dark black water, as if the individual had just walked out of the ocean floor. The figure stood completely motionless, its face covered by the round glass lenses of the vintage gas mask, staring directly down at the two divers in the water. "Henrik, do you see that?" Johann whispered, his voice trembling in the hollow, echoing cavern. "Who is that? Is someone living in here?" Henrik didn't answer. He was staring at the floor of the catwalk beneath the figure's boots. The iron grating beneath the figure was completely rusted through, leaving gaping holes that extended down into the deep water below. The figure was not standing on the steel. It was hovering inches above the rusted metal, completely weightless, defying all physical laws. Suddenly, the figure raised its right arm with a slow, agonizingly mechanical motion, pointing its gloved finger directly at Johann's chest. In that exact second, the temperature inside the air pocket dropped precipitously. The air became so cold that the diver's breath instantly turned to thick white frost inside their masks. The water surrounding their dry suits began to violently churn, as if an immense, powerful current was rising from the deep bottom of the dry dock channel beneath them. Through the hydrophones strapped to Johann's gear, a deafening metallic screeching filled their ears, the sound of an emergency air raid siren echoing from the flooded walls of the mountain, mixed with frantic, shouting voices speaking in Russian through a wall of heavy static. "Down! Get down now!" Henrik screamed, pulling his regulator into his mouth and deflating his vest. The The two divers plunged back beneath the surface of the black water, launching their underwater scooters into maximum drive toward the distant blast gates. As they raced through the submerged dry dock channel, Johann looked back over his shoulder. In the beam of his rear-facing light, he saw multiple dark, dripping figures floating in the water behind them, not swimming, but drifting through the dark concrete conduit like suspended corpses, moving toward them with impossible speed. They reached the rusted blast gates in a state of absolute, chaotic survival panic. Johann forced his body through the narrow gap beneath the iron gate, scraping his air tank so violently against the rebar that his secondary pressure gauge snapped off, spraying high-pressure air bubbles into the dark water. Henrik pulled him through into the open ocean, and the two divers rocketed to the surface, breaking into the freezing rain of the fjord. They scrambled onto their inflatable boat, coughing and hyperventilating as they looked back at the dark, rocky cliff face of Sector 9. The mountain was completely silent, shrouded in the Arctic storm. But when Johann reviewed his underwater camera footage back at his hotel that night, his hands shook so violently he could barely hold his laptop. The video file recorded inside the air pocket was perfectly clear. It showed the dripping figure on the catwalk, the glass lenses of its gas mask reflecting the bright light of Johann's headlamp. But as the figure pointed its finger at the camera, the digital video file experienced a localized corruption. The face behind the gas mask momentarily shifted, showing a hollow, bone-white skull with open black eye sockets filled with writhing deep-sea organisms. Johann uploaded a heavily redacted snippet of the footage to an online Urbex community before removing his channel's location data. Sector 9 remains locked inside the Norwegian mountain, its flooded submarine pens resting under 40 feet of black Arctic water. It is a monument to the Cold War and a terrifying proof that when men build military fortresses inside the dark places of the earth, some soldiers never leave their posts, even after they have drowned in the dark. Our final account moves to the intersection of deep-crust geology and ancient biological anomalies. It comes from a classified report leaked from a private deep-sea mining corporation that was operating in the South Pacific between 2021 and 2024. Deep-sea mining is one of the most lucrative and dangerous industries on Earth. Corporations deploy massive remote-controlled robotic dredges to the seafloor at depths of 15,000 feet, scraping the abyssal plain for polymetallic nodules containing copper, nickel, and cobalt. In November of 2023, the Pacific Titan was conducting deep-crust drilling operations over an uncharted hydrothermal vent field known as Sector B12. The vessel's main drill rig, a massive diamond-tipped steel column capable of penetrating 2 miles into the oceanic crust beneath the seafloor, drilling a vertical sampling hole to analyze rare earth mineral deposits. At a depth of 3 miles below the sea surface and 2,000 feet inside the solid basalt rock of the ocean crust, the drill bit suddenly lost all resistance. The lead drilling engineer, a man named Marcus, monitored the telemetry screens in the ship's control center. The drill bit hadn't hit a pocket of soft sediment or oil. It had broken through the basalt ceiling into a massive, previously unknown subterranean liquid cavity, a deep-crust aquifer spanning miles beneath the ocean floor, completely cut off from the world above for hundreds of millions of years. The water, in this deep crest cavity was crystal clear, heavily pressurized and heated by geothermal vents to over 90 degrees Celsius. As the ROV drifted through the subterranean ocean, its cameras captured structural formations on the basalt floor that defied all natural geological explanations. Rising out of the mineral sediment were towering geometric pillars constructed out of polished, dark obsidian stone. The pillars were covered in intricate mathematical grooves that formed flawless, repeating fractal patterns that had been carved into the stone with microscopic precision. "Marcus, that's not a natural basalt formation," the chief geologist whispered, leaning close to the high-definition monitor. "Look at the angles. That's artificial. Someone built those." Marcus adjusted the ROV's camera focus, directing the vehicle deeper into the obsidian pillar array. As the ROV passed through the central avenue of the subterranean structures, its acoustic sensors registered a sudden, massive increase in ambient water temperature and pressure. The thermal sensors spiked from 90 degrees Celsius to over 180 degrees Celsius in seconds, causing the ROV's hydraulic fluid seals to groan under the extreme heat. Then, the camera feed captured something rising out of the deep sediment between the obsidian pillars. It was a creature of biological impossibility. Spanning over 80 feet in length, the entity possessed a serpentine, segmented body covered with overlapping plates of dark, iridescent mineral shell that reflected the ROV's halogen lights like polished mercury. It had no fins, no eyes, and no visible respiratory structures. Instead, along its massive body were dozens of large, circular apertures that glowed with a blinding, pale blue bioluminescent light. The creature did not swim toward the ROV with aggressive intent. It circled the vehicle with a slow, deliberate, majestic intelligence, its bioluminescent apertures pulsing in a complex, rhythmic sequence. As the sequence completed, every electronic system inside the ROV failed simultaneously. On the surface vessel, Pacific Titan, 3 miles above, the primary control console in the ship's bridge exploded in a shower of electrical sparks. The vessel's main diesel generators shut down, plunging the entire ship into pitch-black darkness in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Through the ship's interior comm system, a low, vibrating frequency filled the air of every deck, a frequency that vibrated through the steel hull, causing the crew's vision to blur and triggering an overwhelming, primal state of nausea and disorientation. It took the ship's crew 6 hours to restore emergency power and pull the ROV's tether back to the surface. When the titanium vehicle was finally winched onto the deck, the engineering team found that the 3-mile-long steel drill pipe had been cleanly severed at the point where it entered the subterranean cavity. The 4-inch thick solid steel column was melted and fused shut, as if sealed by an industrial plasma torch. The 4K video recording recovered from the ROV's internal hard drives was confiscated within 48 hours by representatives from a private international maritime security firm. The crew of the Pacific Titan were forced to sign strict non-disclosure agreements, and the drilling coordinates for Sector B12 were permanently erased from global oceanic databases. The official public release stated that the drilling rig had suffered a mechanical failure due to a high-pressure methane gas pocket. But Marcus saved a single low-resolution screen capture on a private drive before the data was wiped. The image shows the obsidian pillars standing in the dark subterranean ocean, miles beneath the Earth's crust, and the massive glowing serpentine entity hovering above them, an ancient guardian watching over a world that was ancient before human beings ever learned to walk on land. We look at the maps of our world, at our modern cities and our vast oceans, and we comfort ourselves with the comfortable lie that we are the masters of this planet. We believe that every corner has been explored, every cave mapped, and every deep-sea trench cataloged by science. But the flooded missile silos of Washington, the titanium tombs of the Mariana Trench, the haunted submarine pens of Norway, and the subterranean oceans of the Pacific tell a very different story. They prove that beneath the surface of our reality lies a vast, dark, unmapped world. A world where human engineering fails, where time loses its meaning, and where ancient things breathe in the black water. The next time you stand on a quiet beach at night, staring out at the vast, dark horizon of the sea, or look down into a deep, flooded shaft in the woods, pay attention to that sudden, cold tightness in your chest. That is not just fear. That is an evolutionary alarm bell hardwired into your DNA by ancestors who knew that the water is deep, the dark is endless, and some doors were meant to stay welded shut. If this deep dive into the abyssal archives made your blood run cold, shatter that like button right now to feed the algorithm and keep the Prince of Darkness army growing. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an investigation into the classified dark. Now I want to hear from you. Head down to the comments and tell me, which of these 4 accounts unnerved you the most? Do you believe governments are sealing these deep structures to protect us or to keep something else from coming up? Let me know. I read and analyze every single comment. Until next time, keep your flashlight charged, check your oxygen, and whatever you do, don't look down into the black water. Good night.